the Russo-Japanese War, that is, the war fought between Japan and Russia in the early 20th century. In the previous issue, I described the Great Voyage of the Baltic Fleet led by Russo-Japanese. In this article, I would like to explain the Japanese Allied fleet that intercepted it. After General Nogi dropped Fortress Lushun, all remaining ships of the Lushun fleet left in Port Lushun were destroyed. Thus, Togo's combined fleet was given time to intercept the Baltic Fleet. Togo decided to conduct fleet maintenance and carefully plan how to destroy the Baltic Fleet. This is in contrast to Russo-Japanese, whose goal was simply to reach Vladivostok. As discussed in the previous commentary, after the Battle of Mukden, the Japanese and Russian land forces were in no condition to carry out the war against each other. Whether or not to continue the war depended on the outcome of the decisive battle between the Baltic Fleet and the Allied fleet. Suppose that the Baltic Fleet avoided a decisive battle with the Allied fleet and fled to Vladivostok. If the Baltic Fleet then conducted a campaign to cut off Japan's supply routes, it would be difficult for the army in Manchuria to continue the war. That would be tantamount to Japan's defeat. On the other hand, if the Allied fleet destroyed the Baltic Fleet, Russia would have to continue fighting Japan further. Given the domestic situation in Russia, it would be difficult to continue the war. This would be tantamount to Russia's defeat. For this reason, not only Japan and Russia, but the whole world was watching the outcome of this naval battle. Seiyuki Akiyama, the chief of staff of the Allied fleet, has been worrying about one thing for a long time. Incidentally, this Akiyama Mano is the younger brother of Yoshifuru Akiyama, a member of the Japanese cavalry, who is active in the Japanese army. The question is which route the Baltic Fleet will take to Vladivostok. There are two major routes to Vladivostok, Russia. One route is through the Tsushima Strait between Japan and Korea. The other is through the Pacific Ocean side of Japan, crossing the Tsugaru Strait between Hokkaido and Aomori or the Soya Strait between Hokkaido and Sakhalin to Vladivostok. If he made the wrong choice between the two, the Baltic Fleet would reach Vladivostok unscathed. Togo sank a mine in the Tsugaru Straits between Hokkaido and Aomori, making it impossible for ships to navigate. Now the Baltic Fleet would have to bypass Hokkaido even further afield when passing through the Pacific. While Akiyama pondered the two routes, Togo, a skilled sailor, was convinced. The enemy would cross the Tsushima Strait. If the Baltic Fleet proceeded through the Pacific, it would have to make a major detour through Hokkaido, and would need to refuel somewhere. The enemy would not take such a risk. In February 1905, after repairing the fleet, the Allied fleet went to Korea and repeated fleet drills in the vicinity of the Tsushima Strait. The General Staff Akiyama devised a 7-stage strategy. 1. A lightning attack by destroyers the night before the decisive battle. 2. A decisive battle of the main fleet using the T-shaped strategy. 3. 4. A lightning attack by destroyers the night after the main battle. 5. 6. A second attack by the main fleet after dawn. 7. The Baltic fleet lured into mines laid near Vladivostok to be destroyed. He believed that a fleet decisive battle with the main ships alone would miss many ships in Vladivostok. Therefore, he had high expectations for torpedo attacks by destroyers. However, in order for a destroyer to hit an enemy ship with a torpedo, it had to get very close to the enemy ship, fire the torpedo, and then immediately run away. It was so dangerous that a destroyer crewman who approached an enemy ship at close range had to be prepared to die. The destroyer captain who commanded this operation was the future Prime Minister, Kantaro Suzuki. He was the Prime Minister at the time of Japan's unconditional acceptance of surrender in World War II. He trained so hard that he earned the nickname Kantaro the Demon, and in this naval battle, he hit an enemy ship with a torpedo on a destroyer under his command. Togo was convinced that the Baltic Fleet would come through the Tsushima Strait, but Seiyuki Akiyama was not sure which way the Baltic Fleet would come. However, he could not split his fleet and disperse his forces, so he spent his days praying that the enemy would come to Tsushima. After the Russo-Japanese War, he became a religious enthusiast. It is said that he thought it was God's help that the enemy had crossed the Tsushima Strait, and this is the reason he became devoted to religion. Togo heard a report from a Norwegian ship captured by the Russians that the Baltic Fleet was likely to cross the Tsushima Strait as of May 19. However, the Baltic Fleet's subsequent course could not be traced. He sent a message to the Imperial headquarters stating that if the Baltic Fleet's movements could not be ascertained by noon on the 26th, he would move the combined fleet to Hokkaido. At midnight on the 26th, he received information that the Baltic Fleet's carriers were arriving in Shanghai. Considering the location, the Baltic Fleet was likely to be south of Kyushu, and Togo decided to stay in Tsushima until the Baltic Fleet was discovered in the Pacific. At 2 a.m. on May 27, a patrol ship spotted the Baltic Fleet in the waters west of Kyushu. When the Chief of Staff, Seiyuki Akiyama, heard this news, he jumped for joy, and even Togo, who had been expressionless, gave a faint smile. At 5 a.m., the entire Allied fleet launched a sortie. Akiyama sent a message to the Imperial headquarters. Enemy ships have been sighted, and the combined fleet is to sail out and destroy them. The weather is fine today, but the waves are high. This report of clear weather and high waves has the following meaning. The weather is clear, the enemy is easy to spot, and there is little chance of escaping the enemy. Because of the high waves, our forces, which are highly skilled in bombardment, have an advantage over the enemy forces. But destroyers, which are small ships, are unlikely to conduct torpedo attacks on the enemy due to the waves. In other words, we will settle everything in a main fleet decisive battle. Togo announced the decisive battle. The fate of Japan depends on this battle. All hands must work hard. He then hoisted the Z flag on the flagship Mikasa. Since then, it has become customary for the Imperial Japanese Navy to raise the Z flag at every major naval battle. After receiving reports from patrol boats, the 3rd Japanese Squadron approached the Baltic Fleet and sailed close to it. The Baltic Fleet's Russo-Japanese did not attack the fleet, nor did he jam their radios. The Baltic Fleet's objective was not to destroy the Allied fleet, but to reach Vladivostok with as little damage as possible. Thus, he probably wanted to avoid unnecessary fighting and loss of time. It is unclear why he did not jam the Japanese radio signals. The 3rd Squadron continually sent information to the Allied fleet on the Baltic Fleet's direction of movement and position. The approach of this 3rd Squadron to the Baltic Fleet caused Russo-Japanese to hesitate in his fleet maneuvers. He wanted to change from a single vertical to a single horizon formation before making contact with the Allied fleet. The single vertical formation is easy to move the fleet when navigating because the flagship only follows the following ship, but it is not suitable for combat. The single horizon formation is convenient for fighting the enemy because the ships sail side by side, but it is not suitable for navigation because it runs parallel to the flagship. With the 3rd Squadron running alongside, Russo-Japanese lost no time in forming a single horizon formation. Moreover, he once gave the order to form a single horizontal formation, and then again gave the order to return to a single vertical formation. This change of command resulted in a half-hearted fleet move from a 12-ship single vertical formation to a 2-row single vertical formation. Before Russo-Japanese could re-establish the single vertical formation, the combined fleet was set before him. Finally, the final battle, the Battle of the Sea of Japan, is about to begin. I would like to talk about the specific battle in the next commentary. If you enjoyed this article, please subscribe to the channel and click the like button.